I now want to bring in the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee and a founding member of the Freedom Caucus, Chairman Jim Jordan. Chairman Jordan, thanks for being back with us. Always enjoy our conversations.
Yeah.
You know, when I was thinking about you coming on, there was this epic exchange from a hearing a little while ago on PBS and NPR. I want to just play it for the audience and remind them. Take a look.
Our current editorial leadership believes that was a mistake, as do I.
Yeah, the whole country knows that was a mistake. Definitely impacted the election, or I think it certainly impacted the election. How about the COVID origin story? That's a pretty big story too, right? Mr. Berliner said, we became fervent members of the team Natural Origin, even declaring that the lab leak was debunked by scientists. Turns out, though, the lab leak is what most people think actually caused the COVID virus.
Sorry, question there?
There is. You guys were 0 for 3 on the three of the biggest stories in the last 5 years. You guys were 0 for 3, and yet you maintain that NPR is not biased?
All right. Chairman, when you had that conversation, and I played that clip where Catherine Mayer, she responds to you and says, I just didn't think it passed the smell test.
No, it doesn't. Not even close, Sean. Remember, one of their award-winning journalists at PBS, at NPR, did a survey of the editors for NPR in the DC area, 87 editors. And he asked and determined what their political affiliation was. It was 87 Democrats, 0 Republicans. So not 44-43, not 50-37, 87 to 0. And yet she maintains that they are, not biased in any way. It just ridiculous. And as you point out, this just doesn't pass the smell test. And this is from one of their own who is liberal, who is a Democrat, who worked for them for 23 years and was an award-winning journalist. But even he thought they had strayed from what they're supposed to be, particularly when they get your money and your viewers' money.
So night after night, not every night, I have Republican lawmakers on. And when I ask them this question, because it's a pet peeve of mine, I just don't believe that the federal government should be in the business of this. And everyone agrees with me. You've led the charge on this. Is it done for good? Are we done with them? Or at the end of this year, are we going to hear an excuse why a Republican House and a Republican Senate couldn't get it over the finish line?
I think it'll pass next week in the House. And this is the bill that says your tax money, your viewers' tax money, Americans that I represent in the 4th District of Ohio shouldn't have their tax money subsidizing a news organization. You don't get subsidized by the taxpayer. So yeah,
I would. Just for the record, if you want to, I will take it if I can get a USAID grant or something.
Yeah. So I do think it'll pass. Frankly, it should have passed. I'll be honest. I wish we'd have been doing these rescission bills all along. We should have passed the NPR bill, rescinding the money, taxpayer money going to Corporation for Public Broadcasting and NPR. We should have passed it the week of that hearing. The day after that hearing, it should have been on the floor and say, get rid of this. Remember when President Trump gave his joint address to Congress a couple months ago? He did a great job, great speech. But the best part of the speech, I thought, was when he rattled off all the stupid things American tax money is going to. We should have been doing every single one of those, one a day, one a week. I don't care. I'm glad it's coming now, but I wish we'd have been doing this all along.
So it begs the question: why aren't you? Not you, because I look at this is Jim McLaughlin and John McLaughlin did this poll, and I had him on the other day. Voters are massively in favor of getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, excessive and inefficient government, and yet it doesn't happen. And normally politicians follow the voters like, oh, that's what you want. Why doesn't it get done? Is it just not the reward isn't there?
Well, I think, again, you sort of have to wait for the executive branch to send us the package, because the crazy rules that we have in Congress, if money's been appropriated and then these agencies were spending it in stupid ways, to rescind it, the federal government, the executive branch has to send it back to us. So we've been waiting on the Office of Management and Budget to send it back to us. But we've been so focused on the big beautiful bill, which I understand it's an important piece of legislation. I think a good piece of legislation, that the rescission stuff hasn't come yet. It's coming next week. But I thought we should have done. In fact, I even called Russ Vought at OMB several weeks back and said, send us the rescission bills. Send us, even if you just got to break them down into small pieces. We'll do one, like I said, one a day, one a week. But it's the whole complexities of the government and how it works. And if you send it and it doesn't pass, then you're obligated to spend it under our constitutional system. So I get some of that, but I still think we could have done. It'd have been nice if we'd had these things earlier and been doing them in smaller chunks all along.
I agree. So the first chunk, $9.5 billion, got sent. Is that going to pass?
I think so. I think it will pass the House, and then we'll see in this. You never know with the Senate, but again, I think it will, because I go back to that moment when President Trump was rattling them all off. And it was like maybe the strongest applause in the chamber. And I think that was probably happening in living rooms around the country who were Americans watching that speech, as you point out. So Americans get this. They said we all have our favorite example. Mine is Sesame Street in Iraqi television. I mean, why are we sending taxpayer money to put Big Bird, Bert and Ernie on Baghdad TV? I don't know. That seems stupid to me. Why? I think a single bill on that matter would have been fine months ago. But now it's in this bill, and we'll go from there.
And the worst part is, again, this is like, I get this isn't consequential, but I believe every dollar that's spent should be respected. The thing that most people don't get is that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting licenses the children's television network broadcast of Sesame Street. Big Bird's a billionaire, a millionaire at the least, right? This is not some government program. Sesame Street is a show owned by the Children's Television Network that sells merchandise, makes millions and millions and millions of dollars, and then we license the show. So all you're doing when you're then relicensing and sending it to Iraq is making them richer. It's not like we're funding this in the government.
Great point.
But the thing that's so interesting on the rescission package is, okay, is there any Republican niche group that you've heard so far that says, I don't know that we can do this. This is what I worry about. It's someone who says, I wanted to be for it, but page 546 has this little pet project for my district on it. Is there any group that's emerged that says, I can't?
There's a couple senators I saw in today's press. There's a couple senators who are concerned about certain elements. I think they get over that. I think what drives the legislation in my mind is what we've been talking about. It's NPR, it's the Corporation for Public Broadcast, PBS, it's that stuff. I think that drives it because everyone sort of gets, no, taxpayer money shouldn't be used to fund the media. We got all kinds of media. Some is sort of biased to the right. Some is biased to the left. Most is biased to the left. But we have all kinds of media. Taxpayers shouldn't be subsidized. So I think that's what's driving the bill, and that'll be the focus. So I think it passes, even though there's some other things in the USAID programs that people are concerned about.
So Josh Hawley in the Senate, if we talk about the big, beautiful bill, has expressed some concerns about cuts. I want to play you what Hillary Clinton said about cuts. Okay, this again is where I go, why are we not playing this everywhere right now? This is Hillary Clinton talking about public benefits. Take a look.
As to illegal aliens, we agree with you that we do not think the comprehensive health care benefits should be extended to those who are undocumented workers and illegal aliens. We do not want to do anything to encourage more illegal immigration into this country. We know now that too many people come in for medical care as it is. We certainly don't want them having the same benefits that American citizens are entitled to have.
According to this polling that I had on the show the other day with the McLaughlin brothers, 2-to-1 margin, 68 to 29. 2/3 of Americans believe waste, fraud, and abuse in the Medicaid system is a problem. 4 and 5, 79 to 16 support requiring able-bodied Americans to work, to be looking for a job or attending school. This, to me, is an easy lift. Our own side should not be undermining this.
No, Medicaid is for the disabled. Medicaid is for moms and single moms and kids. It is not for illegal migrants to be on that system. And frankly, if you're an adult male and you're able-bodied and you're in Medicaid, you should have to work. If you're getting taxpayer money, you're able-bodied adult, you got to work. That's just a fundamental principle. For the left to say anything different just makes no sense to me. I don't think it's accurate in any way. And what I love most about this, I said this on the floor, the House floor during the debate. I said, this bill's a good bill because the left and the Democrats hate it. And they hate it because it embraces common sense core Republican principles. It says we're going to cut taxes so parents can keep more of their money to spend on their goals and their dreams. It says we're going to secure the border to make sure we have that we don't have what we saw under Joe Biden. It says if you're an able-bodied adult and you're in our welfare systems, you're going to have to work. And it says to moms and dads, we're going to give you school choice. 4 fundamental Republican conservative common sense principles. Of course, the Democrats don't like that. That's why it's a good piece of legislation. And I think that's why it ultimately gets over the line and gets signed into law by July 4th.
When the McLaughlins released this polling that focused just on battleground districts, the key to maintaining a House majority.
Yeah.
They wrote this in the memo. The path to winning includes stopping any tax increase, creating savings by cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, eliminating taxpayer benefits for illegal aliens, and preserving and protecting safety nets like Medicaid for American citizens who need it. But then they came to this really interesting finding. 2 in 5 voters, 43%, continue to be unaware that the 2017 Tax and Jobs Act is set to expire, leaving what'll be a huge tax increase. So the question I have for you is, as somebody who's out there a lot talking about this, how do we message about the consequences of not passing the bill and the benefits of passing it?
Well, it's funny. I almost want to flip it around and say, like, that's why I believe this thing will pass, because in the end, if it doesn't, a tax increase will happen on the good families, good small business owners, the good people I get the privilege of representing in the 4th District of Ohio. And every single Republican member has to think about that. Do you really want taxes going up on the people you get the privilege of serving? No, we don't. That's a fundamental principle. So in the end, that is the driving element, I think, in this legislation. And then when you add to it, we've also appropriated the resources to keep the border secure, which President Trump has done. We've also given moms and dads school choice. And we've also said, if you're able-bodied in our welfare system, you got to work. I think when you put that together, now, should we have achieved more savings? Of course, I'm all for more savings. But we got this balance. We got to get the votes. But those 4 fundamental principles are why this thing gets done. And the chief one is the one you just pointed out, Sean. If we don't pass this, taxes go up. We're the party of lower taxes. Let's make sure we get it passed.
From a conference standpoint, do you think that you guys are I mean, like you, I see Jim Jordan out there all the time, right? You are one of the leading voices for the America First agenda and for what this bill and et cetera will do. Do you think that based on that polling, we're doing enough to let people know what the consequences are?
I mean, you know, I guess you can always argue we can do more. I think we are doing enough. I think the country gets it. When I'm out and about talking with folks, I was in Iowa last week helping 3 of our candidates. When you're out and about, I think people get it all over the country. Middle class, working class folks understand it. So I think we just got to keep it up. What you're doing is great. Keep talking about it. We all just have to do that. That's politics. They're going to say, oh, it slashes this, which is baloney. We just got to tell the truth. You know, and point it out. And if we do that, I think we'll be fine. Plus, the American people, I think, are wise to the left now. I always say the left has a template they follow. The left will tell a lie. I mean, the most recent one is, of course, Joe Biden's just fine. The left will tell a lie. Mainstream media will report the lie. Big tech will amplify the lie. And then when you tell the truth, they call you a racist or they'll call you something else. Well, the country's now figured that out. And they really figured it out on November 5th. And they said, we're done with all the crazy left stuff. We're going to go with common sense. And they understand this bill is common sense.
So the bill is big. It may be beautiful, but it is definitely big. It's over 1,000 pages long. And one of your colleagues yesterday, Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, came out and said, hey, I didn't know that there was this 2-page provision in there that dealt with AI. The first thing I want to ask you is that when you do big bills like this and you jam them the way that they, and I get it. Like to some degree, when you got a bill this big and you're trying to, patch it together, you got to balance it to get the warring factions. Are you concerned about how the process went down, though, based on what Marjorie said yesterday?
Well, I mean, look, what's the old line? The legislative process is always kind of messy. Just the way frankly, it's the way the founders kind of put it together. It's never supposed to be smooth and easy because they want to protect liberty. They want to protect freedom, and they want us to protect, property and wealth and rights and liberties and free speech and all those things we have. So it's never really easy. Sometimes when you do these big bills, there's some of that happens. But we've been talking about reconciliation, working on it for months and months. I know what came out of our committee where we focused on what needs to happen to maintain the security on our border. We had resources in there for ICE agents, 10,000 ICE agents, more detention space, detention beds, more ability to fly, repatriate people back to their native country, all those things. So it is a big piece of legislation. Those things kind of happen. But I think we've been working on this for months. And it's, again, a good piece of legislation because of those 4 fundamental principles that I talked about.
She brought up her concern specifically in those 2 pages was about AI, artificial intelligence being regulated by the federal government. Now, if you recall, back in the 90s when I was a Hill staffer, we did this with the internet. We basically said we don't need 50 states trying to regulate the internet in its infancy. I actually thought it was a smart move then because we needed to allow innovation to work its way. Yep. Are you concerned about this AI provision?
No, not really. I mean, I love March. She's a great member and a good friend. And I think she's great for our party in so many ways. But I do think if you don't have this provision, then you have, it basically comes down to then what's California going to make as their rule, and that's going to be the rule because they're the biggest state. And is that necessarily good? Well, it could be, I guess, but most of the time, policies California comes up with aren't really that good. I mean, just look at the state, look at all the people leaving, and everything else. So I think that's the sort of as you point out, Sean, that's sort of the fundamental concern is if you have 50 states doing different things, you wind up going to the lowest common denominator, and that becomes the standard, and that inevitably winds up being, California, New York, and Illinois, which is not what we want.
And people need to, I think your point is so well taken, because when you think about car standards, academic standards, so many times they'll look and say, hey, that's the big dog market wise. We got to do what they're doing. And for folks on our side, on the conservative side, we'll get screwed on that. You brought up Joe Biden, though, and this is where I want to this is like something that Ed Martin, the pardon attorney for the president at the Department of Justice, is looking into. Is your concern, if you agree with this, that the pardons weren't properly issued, or that there's a bigger issue with intent, meaning that some people argue whether or not he signed it isn't the big issue. It's whether he intended to do it or not, right? And I think there's a difference.
No, it's the latter. It's the only, in my judgment, the only concern is the latter. I mean, whether he physically signed it or not. I mean, remember too, under our Constitution, the pardon power is broad and solely resides with the presidency, with the president. So that is a fundamental right that the president has to pardon pretty much whoever he darn well wants, is sort of the what the Constitution says. It's an exclusive power that invested in the commander-in-chief, invested in the president. I think the real question is, did he know what was going on? Yeah. And that's a legitimate issue. If you read, I read Tapper's book on the flight out to Iowa and the flight back.
Please tell me you didn't pay for it. Please tell me you didn't pay for it.
Well, I forget who got it for me. I had someone send it to me, so I ended up reading it. But I think the biggest takeaway for that is the media. I mean, the media lied to us, and now, Jake Tapper lied to us for 4 years, and now he's making money telling the truth. I mean, made money on both sides of the deal. Such a deal. So, I think that's the big takeaway. The country saw it themselves. We particularly saw it on the debate stage, that debate when President Trump did so well and Joe Biden did so bad. So, it is what it is. I think Chairman Comer's going to do a little investigating there, and I think that's fine.
But Tapper apparently has 2 more books in the works. 1, Russia, the major hoax that no one saw, and 2, Biden Inc., how the Bidens profited off government and no one knew about it either. Yeah, they're apparently those are in the queue. But to your point, how do we? What concerns me is intent. Like, how do we figure out whether or not? And I think this is important. I think it's important to know whether the president of the United States knew who was making decisions in this country or not, and if not him, then who? How do we find that out?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we can dig around and do our oversight work that the Constitution requires, but I think there's some of these individuals will claim executive privilege when they come in. They'll assert that privilege. I guess you would have to get someone to come forward and say, almost like a whistleblower. And I don't think you're going to get that from the key people around the president and the first lady, President Biden and the first lady. I mean, this is Zients, this is Klain, this is Donilon, this is Ricchetti. These are the key people. Are they going to say that? I doubt it. They're going to come in and say, no, every time I was around. They're going to say what they said for 3 years and 8 months or whatever, 9 months is. They're going to say that same thing. So, but I do think we can kind of poke around and find out, see what we can discover. But my gut tells me there's going to be privilege asserted by many of them if, in fact, Chairman Comer brings them in for a deposition.
Last thing I just want to ask you is this wave of anti-Semitism. What concerns me about what happened in Colorado and last week in D.C. is the left. You talk about the role of the media and the cover-up of Joe Biden. Yeah. What concerns me is people being attacked for their faith, and the left is silent on this. The media is complicit in this cover-up as well. Yeah. And I just wonder what. Like, I didn't ever think back in the day that this would be a partisan issue. We'd be fighting about lower government and lower taxes, and these guys would be fighting for big government. But I never thought I'd see a Democratic Party that was silent on the issue of anti-Semitism the way that the current left and the media are now.
Yeah, no, I didn't either. And it's when I'm out and about, I always say that, not all Democrats are crazy, but the left that controls their party is. And the left has fostered this environment that has led to these, the attack on Governor Shapiro's residence and his family, and the attack that killed 2 Israeli embassy people. And then, of course, this crazy stuff in Colorado. The left's moral equivalence they've tried to create, which is just ridiculous, of between Israel and Hamas. I mean, like, Hamas is terrorism. They're a terrorist organization. So there's that element. There's what's going on in college campuses, the tolerate, how they tolerate the threats and the crazy teachings on college campuses, and we've seen that play out. And then you couple all that with the crazy immigration policies of the previous administration, and you get this terrible mix, and led to, I think that's what created this situation in Boulder. So we got to fight all of it. We got to keep talking about it, and when we do that, I think we're having a hearing right now. We're having a hearing today on college campuses and the coordination there, and we know what's going on there. With, it looks like some anti-competitive activities are taken there. Not to mention all the stuff we saw over the last 2 years. Crazy things that they allowed, particularly the crazy anti-Semitic stuff that was permitted on these campuses as well. So we just got to speak out against it every single time.
Chairman Jim Jordan, I always appreciate your time and your insights. Keep fighting the good fight, sir.
You too. Thanks, Sean.